What if the secrets you keep are the very threads that weave the tapestry of his desire? What if mystery isn't manipulation, but a form of emotional intelligence? There's a quiet force that holds more power than words, the choice not to say everything, not to reveal every thought, every feeling, every memory, especially to a man you're still learning to trust. In a world that tells women to be endlessly open, constantly available, and always transparent, the truth is, overexposure is not intimacy, it's erosion. You've been taught that silence is withholding, that keeping parts of yourself private means you're cold, distant, even deceptive. But let me offer you a different lens, one Skinner would have appreciated deeply. Behavior is shaped by consequence, and sometimes the consequences of oversharing are subtle but brutal. A man stops chasing what he fully possesses. A mind loses interest in what it already predicts. A heart grows lazy when it no longer wonders. So today, we're not talking about playing games, we're talking about the science of attraction, the reinforcement schedules that drive emotional engagement, the subtle boundaries that invite curiosity instead of boredom. This isn't manipulation, it's self-respect with psychological awareness. When you hide the right things, you protect the mystery of your being. You safeguard the value of your time, your attention, your emotional world. You keep alive what too many relationships lose too quickly: tension, curiosity, pursuit. A woman who speaks less than she knows, who shares less than she feels, who reveals less than she's lived, is not dishonest. She is discerning. She is strategic. She understands what Skinner taught us so long ago, that behavior is not only shaped by what is present, but also by what is absent, by what is delayed, by what is earned. In this journey, you'll learn 5 secrets worth keeping, not because you're hiding who you are, but because you're protecting the sacredness of your presence. You'll understand how to let a man earn access to your world, not walk in as if he's entitled to it. And most importantly, you'll begin to see withholding not as a weakness, but as a strength, a behavioral cue, a message. You must pay attention if you want to know me. Because ultimately, emotional availability should never come at the cost of your emotional autonomy. And so we begin with the first secret you should never fully reveal: your total availability. Secret number 1, the full extent of your availability. A woman who is always available slowly becomes invisible. Not because her worth diminishes, but because her presence becomes expected, predictable, taken for granted. And in behavioral terms, when something is always accessible, it stops being rewarding. Skinner called this continuous reinforcement. When a behavior is always met with the same response, interest fades. The human mind, especially in romantic dynamics, doesn't crave stability as much as it craves stimulation. This is where the power of intermittent reinforcement becomes crucial. The same principle that keeps gamblers pulling the lever or social media users refreshing their feed also plays out in emotional dynamics. When your presence, your responses, your time are not always guaranteed, they become more valuable. Desire intensifies in the space between certainty and doubt. You don't need to play hard to get, but you do need to stop being easy to forget. Overexposure is a quiet trap. It begins with the innocent impulse to show you're caring, supportive, responsive. You answer every message instantly. You shift your schedule to match his. You say yes even when you're tired. And before you know it, you've trained him, not maliciously, but consistently, to believe that your world revolves around his. But here's the truth. When you're always there, he doesn't have to wonder where you are. When you're always emotionally available, he doesn't have to reach toward you. When you give all your presence unconditionally, you strip him of the opportunity to value your absence. Skinner would interpret this pattern not as love, but as conditioning. The man learns that your time has no cost, that your energy is always renewable, that your emotional availability is unconditional. And so his behavior adapts, not to appreciate, but to expect. Think of one woman, perhaps yourself, who has given endlessly, only to feel unseen. She was there through his silence, through his chaos, through his inconsistencies. She answered every call. She made space when none was made for her. She made herself fully available, and slowly, she disappeared in his eyes. Now imagine if she had paused, not punished, but paused, delayed her response, held her plans, honored her needs first. The story may have unfolded differently, not because she manipulated him, but because she preserved her value. Skinner reminds us, reinforcement increases behavior. When you reinforce your own boundaries, your time, your space, you train the environment to respect them, including him. So I ask you now, are you being present or are you being overexposed? If he knows exactly when and how you'll respond, exactly when you're free, exactly what you'll say, he no longer has to be present. He goes on autopilot, and desire can't survive automation. Let him wonder where you are sometimes. Let him miss your energy. Let him initiate, not out of punishment, but out of balance. Your time is not an open buffet. It's a table he must request a seat at. Next, let's talk about another secret that demands discernment: your past. The stories you tell, and the ones you should keep quietly sacred. Secret number 2, detailed past relationship histories. Some stories are not meant to be shared, not because they hold shame, but because they hold power. Your past relationships are part of your becoming. They've shaped your fears, your reflexes, your standards, but that doesn't mean they must be unwrapped in front of a man still proving he deserves your present. There's a seductive pressure to be honest, to open the vault and offer a man every chapter of your emotional history. Who hurt you? How long it took to recover? What you tolerated? What you regret? You may think, if he knows what I've survived, he'll treat me better. But that's not how behavior works. That's not how human nature works. Skinner would warn you, information shapes response, and when a man knows too much too soon, his behavior may not reflect respect, but strategy. He may adapt to your wounds, not to your worth. When you share detailed past relationship histories, you risk more than vulnerability. You risk triggering comparisons. He may compare himself to your ex. He may question your choices. He may wonder why you stayed or what damage still lingers. Even if he says nothing, the narrative alters the lens through which he sees you. But more subtly, and more dangerously, is the effect on you. The more you retell the old story, the more you remain tethered to it. The emotional charge may soften over time, but the act of repetition keeps you in the role of the woman who was left, cheated on, lied to, betrayed. You're not that woman anymore. But each time you explain her to someone new, you keep her alive in your nervous system. Let's consider a woman who's been through 2 toxic relationships. Both men cheated. Both eroded her self-esteem. She tells this to the new man in her life, hoping for empathy. Instead, he stores that information, not necessarily to hurt her, but to understand her weaknesses. Later in conflict, he accuses her of having trust issues. When she pulls back, he says, "You're just projecting your past onto me." Suddenly, her history becomes a weapon, not a bridge. This isn't about hiding, it's about timing. And more importantly, it's about boundaries. Skinner taught us to look at behavior through outcomes. What is the function of telling a man about your past? Is it to feel seen, to avoid future betrayal, to fast-track emotional intimacy? And most importantly, does the act of disclosure serve your strength or your insecurity? The past belongs to you, not him. At least not right away. If a man earns your trust over time, shows emotional safety, consistent respect, deep listening, then maybe you allow him a glimpse into that sacred terrain, but never because he demanded it. Never because silence felt like guilt, and never because you confused openness with bonding. When you protect your past, you preserve the integrity of your healing. You honor your emotional scars by not displaying them as proof of survival. You shift the focus to the present. Who am I now? What do I want now? So I ask you, are you sharing to connect or to be validated? Remember, a man can only love the version of you he truly knows. Don't let him fall for your wounds before he's even proven he can hold your strength. In our next chapter, we turn our attention to the quiet rhythm of your daily life and why revealing too much of it might cost you more than you think. Secret number 3. Your complete daily routine. There's something sacred about the ordinary, the soft rituals of a woman's life, the morning stillness before the world awakens, the way she brews her coffee, the silence she chooses instead of replying. These moments are not just habits, they are autonomy in motion. Yet too often in the early phases of connection, women give away this quiet sovereignty, not intentionally, but through over-explanation, through constant updates, through the compulsion to narrate where they are, what they're doing, how their day is going, as if to reassure him, I'm here, I'm open, I'm predictable, you don't have to wonder. But let's ask what that behavior reinforces. Skinner would ask, what consequence are you avoiding? Usually it's the discomfort of uncertainty, the anxiety of silence, the fear that if you don't stay visible, you'll be forgotten. So you become transparent. You share your full schedule. You announce when you're going to the gym, when you're seeing your sister, when you'll be home from work. You answer, how was your day, with a detailed breakdown, not because he earned that intimacy, but because you've been conditioned to prove your presence. The danger in this? You lose your mystery, not in a dramatic, romantic sense, but in a behavioral one. Predictability over time reduces the value of attention. If he knows the full landscape of your day, what is left for him to discover? If he can map your movements like a calendar entry, why should his mind linger on you when you're not there? A man doesn't fall in love with a schedule. He falls in love with the sense of aliveness a woman carries, her independence, her subtle unpredictability, her ability to disappear into her world without apology. Consider a woman who shares every hour of her routine with a man she's dating. She tells him when she's at Pilates, what she's cooking, who she's meeting. At first he may find it endearing, but slowly his interest wanes. Not because she's done anything wrong, but because there's no longer any space for longing, for wondering, for mental pursuit. And that's where behavior is shaped, in the gaps, in the pauses, in the not knowing. Skinner's theory of operant conditioning reminds us that behavior becomes more intense, more persistent, when reinforced unpredictably. That doesn't mean you vanish or play games. It means you let your life be yours. You don't have to explain every moment. You don't need to narrate your day to feel seen. You don't owe updates as proof of loyalty. And more importantly, when you withhold the full details of your daily life, you give both of you a gift: independence. You each remain rooted in your own experience. You create emotional spaciousness, a necessary tension that deepens interest rather than dulls it. Some women fear that this space will push a man away. But the truth is, a healthy man is drawn to a woman who doesn't need his attention to justify her existence. A woman who disappears into her life, not to avoid him, but to nurture herself. And when she returns, she brings something back. Stories, energy, unpredictability. That's what keeps interest alive. Not constant access, but intentional presence. So the next time you're tempted to explain your whole day, pause. Ask yourself, does he need this information? Or do I need to feel needed? Not every hour needs to be shared. Not every moment needs to be known. A woman who can disappear without guilt and reappear without apology becomes unforgettable. Now, let's shift to a more internal domain, the emotional landscape. In our next chapter, we explore what happens when you reveal every emotional reaction, and why withholding some of them can be an act of self-preservation, not deception. Secret number 4. Every emotional reaction. There's a silent kind of strength in restraint, the kind that doesn't roar, doesn't explode, doesn't flood the room with emotional urgency. A strength that feels like quiet dignity. But in a culture that tells women to express themselves, to be emotionally open at all costs, this strength is often mistaken for coldness. The truth is, not every emotion deserves expression, and certainly not every man deserves access to the full spectrum of what you feel. You may have been taught that transparency equals authenticity, that if you don't share your hurt, your fear, your longing, your confusion, you're being dishonest. But behavioral psychology sees it differently. Skinner would ask, what behavior are you reinforcing when you respond emotionally to every trigger? He wouldn't judge your feelings. He would simply observe the pattern, and more importantly, the consequences. Because when a man sees every emotional reaction as soon as it arises, the sighs, the questions, the disappointment, the need for reassurance, he begins to form a reinforcement loop. If he can evoke an emotional response from you with his silence, his lateness, his inconsistencies, you're training him, and unconsciously, to realize how much control he has over your emotional climate. And control, for many, becomes complacency. When your emotions are always visible, always accessible, they lose gravity. A woman once said, I told him how I felt every time I felt something. I thought that was healthy communication. But what she didn't see is that her emotions had become background noise, a constant wave of reactions that no longer moved him. He stopped responding not because he didn't care, but because the currency of her feelings had been devalued through overuse. Emotional sharing must be earned. Just like time, just like touch. If a man is still learning how to show up consistently, he doesn't need to be handed the map to your emotional underworld. Let him earn the right to see your storms by proving he can stand with you through calm waters first. Not every feeling needs to become a conversation. Some emotions are better processed within, journaled, walked through, breathed through, not suppressed, but metabolized before they're offered. Because the moment you express a raw emotion to a man, especially one still testing his own emotional maturity, you invite interpretation, judgment, and sometimes misused power. Skinner taught us that behavior is shaped by its consequences. If you cry every time he pulls away, and he learns that your tears resolve conflict without him having to change, what has truly been reinforced? Not empathy, not growth, just a cycle. And yet, there's a deeper truth here. Some emotions, when held privately, deepen your emotional resilience. When you learn that your feelings do not need immediate validation, you stop depending on another person's reaction to feel whole. You begin to self-regulate, not to perform strength, but to embody it. This doesn't mean you never express hurt. It means you choose when and how. It means you don't hand every emotional thread to someone who hasn't earned the right to weave themselves into your inner world. A woman who manages her emotional responses wisely is not cold. She is calibrated. She has stopped using emotional expression as currency and started using it as wisdom. So ask yourself, am I reacting to be heard, or am I expressing to be understood? And more radically, do I even need to share this, or do I just need to understand it within myself? Emotional restraint is not repression, it's maturity. And in love, it creates space for both people to rise, instead of collapse into each other. As we move into the next chapter, we turn to a behavior so subtle, yet so powerful in shaping interest: how and when you respond to messages. Secret number 5, immediate responses to messages. Every time your phone lights up and you respond instantly, a pattern is reinforced. Not of intimacy, but of urgency, of emotional readiness on demand. It feels innocent, even thoughtful. He texts and you respond. You're showing interest, presence, availability. But beneath the surface, a behavioral script is being written, one that conditions him to expect that access, to anticipate your presence like a vending machine, predictable, instant, always there. And the truth is, what's always there becomes invisible. In behavioral psychology, Skinner identified a powerful truth: delayed reinforcement often increases persistence. When the outcome isn't immediate, when there's space, anticipation, even slight tension, engagement deepens. Desire stretches across time, and what's not instantly satisfied becomes more meaningful. Now apply that to romantic communication. When a man sends a message and you pause, not as a tactic but as a natural extension of your life, he feels something he doesn't feel when your reply is immediate. Curiosity. Where is she? What is she doing? Is she busy? Is she thinking of me? That wondering, that waiting, it awakens pursuit. Not anxiety, not manipulation, but mental engagement. He begins to lean forward instead of leaning back. But here's what often happens instead. A woman receives a message and feels a rush of obligation. If I don't answer quickly, he'll lose interest. So she replies mid-task, mid-thought, mid-self. She becomes instantly available, not because it serves her, but because she fears being forgotten. And what does that teach him? It teaches him that your time is pliable, that your world bends for his presence, that he can enter your space at any time and be received, regardless of your own rhythm, mood, or needs. Eventually, this creates a lopsided dynamic. He becomes reactive, not intentional. You become overconnected, but undervalued. And slowly, the communication loses its spark. Because when there's no room for longing, there's no air for attraction. Let's look at a familiar example. A woman meets a man who initiates daily texting. At first, she's thrilled. She mirrors his enthusiasm, responds quickly, stays emotionally available. But weeks pass and something shifts. He texts less or shorter. He seems distracted, and she, in response, texts even faster, trying to pull back what's fading. She doesn't realize. She trained him not to value her responses but to expect them. There is no mystery, no space, no behavioral consequence that prompts effort. The dynamic has become flat because the rhythm was never regulated. Now imagine if from the beginning her responses had been natural, not rushed, not delayed artificially, but paced according to her actual life. When she was working, she stayed present. When she was resting, she didn't check her phone. When she replied, it was thoughtful, not reactive. That simple pattern would have shaped a different expectation. Her time is her own. Her responses are intentional. Her attention is earned, not assumed. This is not about game playing. It's about self-possession, about pacing your responses in a way that aligns with your energy, not his timing. It's about sending the message, without words, that you are engaged with your life, and any man who wants a place in it must move with respect, not demand. Skinner would frame this in terms of environmental control. The power to shape the patterns in your relationships lies not in how fast you respond, but in how consciously you respond, and how consistently you reinforce your own boundaries, even in something as small as a message. So ask yourself honestly, are you answering out of desire or fear? When you delay a response, you're not rejecting him. You're affirming you. You're reminding both of you that interest is not proved through speed, but through presence. Let the conversation unfold like music, with pauses, silence, and rhythm. Because a message received after waiting often means more than one delivered instantly. Now we close this journey with a final reflection, not just on secrets, but on the deeper art of what you choose to reveal and what you choose to keep sacred. A woman who knows what not to say holds a quiet kind of power, the kind that doesn't beg to be understood, but invites curiosity, the kind that doesn't shout, "Look at me," but whispers, "You'll have to earn this." Throughout this journey, we've unwrapped 5 truths not meant for suppression, but for discernment. 5 aspects of your life that, when protected, cultivate intrigue, respect, and depth. Not because you're manipulating a man's mind, but because you're commanding your own. This is the psychology of attraction through strategic disclosure, the delicate balance between emotional openness and emotional sovereignty. And this balance is not easy for women who were taught that love means transparency, that bonding means availability, that trust means total access. But what if the opposite is true? What if true intimacy is not built through overexposure, but through earned insight? What if your silence isn't a wall, but a filter, separating those who are entitled from those who are worthy? Skinner's lens helps us understand this not as emotional withholding, but as behavioral consequence. Every act of disclosure is a stimulus. It evokes a reaction, sets a precedent, teaches someone how to interact with you. If you give everything too soon, your schedule, your wounds, your routines, your reactions, you eliminate the space in which connection deepens. You eliminate the behavioral tension that fuels genuine pursuit. The woman who discloses with intention does not fear vulnerability. She simply refuses to waste it. Let's look back. You learned to protect your availability, not as a tactic, but as a signal. I choose when to engage because my time is a resource, not a default setting. You learned to hold back your past relationships, not out of shame, but because your healing isn't a narrative to be consumed. It's a sacred process, not a sales pitch. You saw how guarding your daily rhythm preserves a touch of mystery, not to withhold connection, but to maintain your independence, your center. You recognize that not every emotional reaction needs to be shared, that strength is found in regulation, not performance, that maturity means pacing, not spilling. And finally, you understood how delayed responses aren't passive-aggressive, they're boundary-affirming. They create space, respect, and value. These aren't games, this is behavioral clarity. A woman who practices strategic disclosure sends one powerful message to every man she encounters. You don't get to meet all of me just because you want to. You meet me in stages, at my pace, on my terms. This is what stops the cycle of overgiving. This is what recalibrates your nervous system after years of emotional burnout. This is what reminds your mind and your body that attention must be mutual, that effort must be mirrored, that love without reciprocity is not love, it's labor. So ask yourself now, which of these secrets have you been giving away too soon? Which ones can you reclaim, not to create distance, but to restore your self-respect? Let your life breathe again. Let your time be yours. Let your feelings be felt before they are shared. Let your presence be rare, not because you're unavailable, but because you're intentional. And most of all, let your story unfold slowly, like a novel with chapters that must be read, not scanned. Because you're not here to entertain, you're here to be known truly, gradually, authentically. If this reflection stirred something in you, if you recognized yourself in these dynamics, I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, which of these secrets do you struggle most to keep? Your story might be the exact mirror another woman needs today, and if you're ready to go deeper into this journey of behavioral clarity, emotional autonomy, and feminine psychological strength, make sure you're subscribed. We're just getting started.